everyone. Welcome to another episode of Quantum GK. I'm your host, Donna Reyes. And this evening, I'm super excited to have with me and with us this evening a colleague, with Gawad Kalinga, and of course, a family with the Gawad Kalinga family. Dr. Francis Lewis Reyes has made an impact in the academy as a professor, but in a researcher, but his success has extended far beyond the university's wall. So Dr. De Los Reyes, or to us Francis, actually sits in the board of directors of Gawad Kalinga USA. Welcome, Francis.
Hi, Donna. Glad to be here.
Good evening. Good evening. So, well, you and I have, worked together as part of the board of directors of the USA for a little over a year now, no? A little over a year, maybe 2 years.
Yeah, I think so. I think we started October 21, I think something like that.
Yes, I thought, a little over, I guess a little over a year. Wow, it feels longer than that because you and I also co-emceed our GK USA conference last October. So 1 year ka pa lang pala nun. But I have not really had a chance to really get to know you. We work together. All I know is that, you're very passionate about, the advocacy for the poor. Other than that, and then of course, I've seen your TED Talk, which by the way was funny and and engaging and entertaining for somebody like me who I'm not really keen on science and all that stuff, but it was very very informative and also entertaining at the same time. But other than that, I don't really know like how you started, for example, with Gawad Kalinga. How did that started for you? Did start for you?
Yeah, so it actually goes back to 2004. So we were in North Carolina, and then my wife, Bembe, was the one who actually introduced Gawad Kalinga to me. So at that time, the executive director of GKUSA was Rose Cabrera. A lot of people know Rose. And actually, Rose was my wife's classmate in high school, STC, sa Quezon City, St. Teresa's College. And so Rose called up my wife, Bembe, and said, "Hey, do you want to be involved?" And like maybe like most people, I was thinking, "Hey, it's another NGO, another charity organization from the Philippines. We're not sure if it's legit. We're not sure if it has staying power. We don't know anything about it." But then we decided to just listen. And then we also invited Dylan Wilk. Around that time, he was visiting the US. And we actually had a chance to have him here in North Carolina. So what we did was we gathered a group of people, went to a little, not really a convention center, but a room, an auditorium. We got a bunch of people from the area, some of our close friends. And then Dylan gave his talk. And I don't know if you've heard Dylan talk in person, but it's quite powerful, right? So that was really the start. And then I have this story that Dylan actually stayed at our house, so to save on hotel costs, and so he stayed at our house. And that first night, he was tired. It was a long day, but we actually talked just one-on-one in our living room until maybe 2 or 3 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he was telling me all about GK and all the work, and I had a lot of questions, as you can imagine. I had a lot of questions about how does this work? What's the theory of change? What's the evidence? How do you know that it's really going to be sustainable? And also trying to figure out, where people are coming from in terms of their intentions, in terms of their values. And, what struck me, siguro halfway through that conversation, was that here across from me in my living room is this guy who's white, who's from the UK, he's British, and he's telling me more about love of country, love of the Philippines. And so I felt a little bit of shame, actually, and embarrassment. And then, that started it. Dylan actually gave me a bunch of the files from, at that time, it was still Angkop, answering the cry of the poor with CFC. And then that started it. And in fact, we were able to organize the North Carolina section right after that. We raised right away, very quickly, along with people from our area, Raleigh Durham, Charlotte, the Triad area, Greensboro, in North Carolina, and we raised $26,000 right away. At that time, it was still, $1,000 a house, and 26,000 was one village.
One village, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, in a matter of months, we were able to raise the money for one village, and then we did it again the next year, and then the following year. So within the span of 3 to 4 years, we were able to fund, 3 North Carolina villages right away. So that was really the start, 2004. So it feels like a long time ago. It is. It's almost 20 years now.
Yeah, yeah. So you, myself, Tito Charlie, Kapati, Dr. Kapati, hello, Tito Charlie, Tita Carol, started right around the same time, right? To ako 2003. And I think Tito Charlie maybe around that time, maybe 2004 also, but yeah, more or less about the same time, right? But here's what I'm really curious about. So you're an engineer, that's your background, right?
Right.
And you mentioned that you and Dylan talked until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I know what you're talking about when you talk to Dylan. Oh my gosh, full of passion. In fact, we were talking about how long the Quantum GK program lasts. For him, it was almost like 2 hours, I think, when he there's just so much to unpack. And he was just sharing stories after stories, which was really inspiring. And, like the comments were exploding and all that stuff. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But given the fact that you're an engineer, your engineering background, was there any, I guess, any point of doubt, or was there any space for doubt in your mind? Maybe in your, what you're saying is that, Dylan moved you. Here's a,
Right.
talking about love of the Philippines, right? So that's the emotional part of it, but you've got to be, but just by training and by background, being an
Right.
engineer, was there any doubt in your mind that Gawad Kalinga's program is going to work?
Well, so actually, it goes beyond that, right? I think I wouldn't say it's my engineering background that, gave me the framework to think about, GK at that time. Actually, in the Philippines before I left, and also as a student, I was, one of the student activists from UP. And so this was, I graduated in high school in 1986, the time of the people power, the first EDSA revolution. And so growing up, being sort of an activist and fighting for change in the Philippines, being concerned about the plight of the country and the citizens of the Philippines. That was kind of like the framework, right? In fact, it was a very nationalist, democratic framework that we had then. And so I was viewing it also through that lens, right? And I'm also a student of change and how these things happen. So, I think what really got to me was the theory of change. The idea at that time, obviously, we're talking about houses and human dignity and how do you transform, and then how it can scale up. And so at that time, the idea that, if you transform slums to colorful villages, and that you do it all over the country, and then you see the volunteerism, the fervor, and the energy and passion of the volunteers. I think actually, that was really the key. So actually, no, you know what? I think I'm wrong. I think it was 2003 when Dylan visited, because 2004 we were doing the build in the Philippines. So yeah, the following year we were actually able to go visit our village in Quirino province and work alongside the community to build their houses. So I think that was 2004. So it must have been 2003 when Dylan came to North Carolina. Yeah, so I think when you talk about doubt, there's always doubt, right? You're always trying to be, okay, what's the return on investment? What's the evidence that it's working? And beyond the statistics, it's really the stories. When he talks about success stories, when he talked about um, how how it really happens on the ground. I think that was really the powerful thing. So it was also a leap of faith, right? I mean, I don't think that all of us in GK, we start with 100%, we're all in, and we don't have any doubts. But I think the following year when we did the bill, that really was also very special, and that was really the thing that I think solidified the commitment, because you can see on the ground what was going on. So I'm always a believer that you really have to go and you have to see what's happening on the ground, because that really fires you up and you see the evidence with your eyes.
Right. And it's not something that you can just tell a story of, right? Like you made a trip, you
Right.
visited the villages, and you tell your family and friends. It's really not the same, as really being there, and talking to the people in the village, the people who, the residents of the GK villages, and everyone who benefits
Yeah.
from the work.
Yeah. I mean, there's a phrase from Tito Tony Meloto at the time, right? And he called it the power of presence.
Yeah.
And I've picked up that phrase, and it's true also for us, right? I mean, Zoom, this from doing Zoom versus in person. There's a really a difference when you meet somebody in person and you can actually talk to them and see them. And there's a certain power there, right? The power of presence. And I also think that, and even as a student activist at the time, I really believe you really needed to see, um, what Father Ed De La Torre calls the suffering and the struggle. So there's an activist priest from the 80s, Father Ed De La Torre. Actually, he's not a father anymore, I don't think. But and he's still around. And he said something that really struck me. And he said, um, you have to see the suffering and the struggle. Um, and what he meant by that was that you have to see the suffering, you have to see the why you are doing this. And he was talking about the broader movement. And that means being in the community, being among the people, and you live it also, on a daily basis. So you see the why. Why are we doing this? So that's very important. I think a lot of people know this, right? First, the why.
Mhm.
But then he also said, you also have to see the struggle. And by that, he meant you have to see the movement and what it's doing, and see the failures and also see the successes, celebrate the successes. If you only see the suffering, you will grow helpless, because you will always say, okay, it's too big of a problem, it's too complex, I cannot do anything about it. And then maybe you'll be depressed, you'll feel negative about it. On the other hand, if you only see the movement and the actions, you will forget sometimes why you're doing this. So you got to see both. The why is the fuel, why you're doing this, and then you have to actually, be part of that movement, and celebrate the successes, so that you can sustain it. And so I think going back to the Philippines, as often as possible, seeing the work on the ground, I think is the key for all of us GK volunteers, because that fuels the reason, the why. And then at the same time, if we, celebrate our successes, whether in GK USA or GK Philippines, that will also sustain us. And, we've been, you and I and Tito Charlie and others, have been here for 20 plus years, 20 years. So that's really a testament. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, those are great points, Francis. Also, I think, I mean, you're right. It's very important to really dig into why are we, why is it so important for us to do what we do for, the advocacy for the poor? Because when we know why, we'll find a way how, like how to make it work, how to scale it, we will figure out the how when we know why, right? And, going back 20 plus years ago, I don't remember Tito Tony Meloto, or even now with, with Luis Oquiniana, or any of the leadership of GK claiming that they know everything and that they have answers to everything.
Right.
And in fact, excuse me, in fact, the challenge has always been, for us to contribute to the movement in the way, like in whatever experience, expertise, skills, or whatever, whatever we can contribute, really, because they never claim, and they actually say that they don't have answers to everything, right? They don't have answers for everything. And so that's why it really is a collaborative, movement. And so I love that. That's what also, what attracted me and keeps me engaged into the work, is that it's alive, and it's dynamic, it's moving, right? It's not something that, for anyone who wants to be a part of this work, it's not sinasabi na ho namin, we don't have answers to everything. And if you're here because of the why, because you believe that, that that we should end poverty in the Philippines, then we'll all figure out, together we will figure out how this is going to work, and how we're going to scale it, right? And also, I also wanted to to honor the leaders who come before us, and those who continue to work with us. It really is. Oh, happiest 20th anniversary, Tito Charlie said. 20th anniversary na pala. Yeah, we've been in this work for, this year will be our 20th anniversary for GS. Yeah, so I also want to honor, the leadership and everyone who's involved in, in this, in our work, with or without an official title, right, or position, because it doesn't really matter, right? But I honor everyone for just really showing, the epitome of servant leadership, right? Of being a good example and just leading from the front, right? And whatever it is that, needs to get done, let's just roll up our sleeves and get it done, right? And that's what I've seen in, many of our advocates for the work. All right, so you also mentioned that you a couple of times in what you've been sharing, that you were a student activist, and I think an activist is always an activist, being one myself. In fact, my mom did not want me to go to UP because she thought I was going to be an activist. So I went to Miriam College instead, and I was in the student council. And guess what? I was always part of the 10 Miriam representatives in the rallies. Whopping 10 of us, right? So, but do you think, though, that there's a certain type of people that gets attracted to our work? I mean, you and I both kind of have the same background, I guess.
Yeah.
Big change in our society and stuff. But what do you think of that? Is there?
I think that's a good question. I think for those of us who are in the US, who grew up in the Philippines, who were born in the Philippines and grew up in the Philippines and then moved to the US. So I think, I guess first generation, it's not actually quite clear what first generation to me means, right? Is it first generation when you come from the Philippines to the US, or anyway, So first generation, I think, a lot of us still feel obviously a connection, but maybe even a responsibility or a duty, or even a feeling of what's the right word? Responsibility is a good word. It's not really guilt, right? Because how it is, back in the Philippines. And I don't know about you, Donna. I mean, we were middle class growing up. We were not really, poor, but we also were not rich. I took the public transportation. We worried about finances like most families. We were not rich, but I cannot claim to be, really poor and deprived. But you grow up in the Philippines and you see your society, and you understand a little bit of Philippine history, and you see the inequities. I think people who have seen that, even when they get to the US, and the contrast, right, between what people are able to achieve here and the quality of life and the standard of living, and the contrast with what the people in majority of the people in the Philippines, right, the bottom 5 million families experience every day. I think there's a certain sense of responsibility. So I don't know if it's a certain type of person, right? I think it's, I would say most Filipinos that I know who grew up in the Philippines and moved someplace else and became successful at that new place, a lot of them are looking for ways to give back. A lot of them want to feel connected. A lot of them understand that they're in a privileged position. Um, I think that's just part of being a Filipino. Um, so even if even if you change your official nationality, you still are a Filipino. And that's what actually excites me too about Chica USA, because we have, right, a really large population of Filipinos, Filipino Americans in the US, and they are, a lot of them are looking for ways to give back, and we have to present GK as um, one of the best ways to be involved and to give back, and to see the impact of their giving. So I don't know if it's a certain type. I think it's mostly, I would say most Filipinos really want to give back and are still nationalistic, to a certain degree. I know that term nationalistic has probably negative connotations now, right? In this more global
Yeah.
society. But I think there's a certain pride also in being Filipino. Um, so when we were at that 2004 build, we stayed there for I think a week in Quirino, and they actually organized these daily meetings with the community and almost like workshops and lessons. And so we had, I think, one day we were talking about Bayan, right, our country. Second day, Bayani, being a hero to one another, right? And then Bayanihan. So Bayan, Bayani, Bayanihan. And it really struck me that, wow, I mean, all of these resonate, right? All of these things, and it's distinctly Filipino. So no, I don't know that we can claim that it's just the activists or the people who were involved before, who are um, passionate about this work. I think really it's every Filipino. And the challenge for us is, when we think about the second generation, our kids who grew up here, who were born here, and how do we impart that same sense of being Filipino? And part of that means giving back and understanding that we are privileged, and there are ways for us to give back, so that we can use our talents, our gifts, so that we can really decrease this inequity in Philippine society.
So there's a couple of things I wanted to unpack in all of what you said.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just talking.
No, no, good. This is all good. I wanted to ask two pang Miss Universe questions. But before that, let's read some of the comments that people have been posting on Facebook. So Tito Charlie says, "Good evening, Francis and Dana." Good evening, Tito Charlie. Thank you for joining.
Hi, Nito Charlie.
And then from LG, "Good to see you here live, Francis. I suppose a friend or family." And then from Maricel Villanueva, "Francis's daughter Mia was the youngest participant at Build in 2004, diba?"
Yeah, that's right. So that was it. And so Mia was 11 at that time. That was 2004. So yeah, I think we may have started 2003, I think. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And she says, "Late last year, another daughter, Mireya, is that, did I say that right? Had her own GK experience in Mindanao." Wow.
Yeah, actually that was Mireya's second GK kind of official experience in 2014. She was the youngest. I think she was maybe 8 at that time, or 7, when we did we brought about 30 people from North Carolina, about 15, 16 teens. Mireya was the youngest at 7 or 8. Also my son Miguel, at that time he was 12. And we did a 1 week build. We did this through Mabuhay tour at the time, Mabuhay tours, and we went around different villages and did several builds. Um, and then last December, Mireya and my wife Bembe, we all went to Marawi with Father Ben, yeah, and Boying and Dulce Rivera. So that was also another experience. So like I said, I think
How old was Maria then?
so Mireya is now 18. Um, so everybody else was working and away, so she was with us. So I got her to go to Marawi. Yeah.
That's incredible. I remember, well, wait, first of all, that's a good segue to sharing our March 25th, our GK Hopal that's in Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah, March 25th. Let me just pull up the announcement here and share with everyone again. All right, where is it? Yeah, so it's happening on March 25th, and we're raising funds for the North Cotabato Productivity Hub. It's the first one, I think, in North Cotabato. Where is it? Like,
yeah, that's Arakan, yeah, that's the project by
it's in
GK
North.
Chicago. Yeah.
Oh, there it is. All right, so let me share my screen here real quick. And so for those of you who are in Chicago or in the Midwest, we invite everyone to attend our GK Chicago Hope Ball, an evening of gratitude. And they promise that you will dance. And of course, of course, you will eat also, but there will be plenty of dancing as well as we raise funds for the North Cotabato Productivity Hub, right? That's on March 25th. Ticket price is $100. It's at 5 p.m. Central Time. And you don't have to be in Chicago. You can fly into Chicago and we will take care of you. I believe there's a discount at the Holiday Inn for those people who are staying overnight. And I know that Tita Carol and some of our GK Houston team are attending. So very, very excited about that. But yeah, so that's incredible that you brought your daughter to Marawi, that you guys went to Marawi, because I remember when I went to Mindanao, this was 1990, I think. So I was 18, actually, same. But I think I was 18 turning 19 when I went. And
so now we can do the math now.
Yeah. I just dated myself. So that was many years ago, more than 30 years ago, and more than 30 pounds ago. So I remember, God bless my mom's heart. She did allow me to go to Mindanao, but she did not know that I would stay behind. So that I could go to North Cotabato, and but even then, and maybe even now, right? People are scared of going to Mindanao, and because they think that it's a dangerous place and all of that. But as we learned in our work for God Kalinga, and also having featured some of our friends in Mindanao, it's not as, it's just like everything else. You have to be careful everywhere you go anyway, right? So you have to connect to the appropriate people and all of that. But it's a beautiful place, from what I've seen before, but that was a long time ago. I'm sure it has changed now. A lot of things have changed, but just getting feedback from everyone who have visited, like Doctors Gigi Bautista and Jerry Sandoval, who went also last year, and we featured them on the show in this program as well. They all shared wonderful, amazing stories about. And yeah, so what an amazing opportunity, amazing experience it must have been also for Maria. 18 years old, meeting all these people, and the culture and all of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, I mean, personally, also, to me, it was also a transformative experience. And again, it's really just understanding the work on the ground. I wanted to see the logistics and of Kusina ng Kalinga, right? Our um, feeding program for school children. And so during and even before that, I actually also went to Chicago one time when Father Ben was doing a tour. And I told him, hey, Father Ben, I want to see the K and K in action. You know, thinking that it will be somewhere in Quezon City or Valenzuela or something. So then he said, "Oh yeah, sure, you should go to Marawi." Okay, and I'm like, "Okay." Father Ben's going to Marawi, and I mean, if you can't trust Father Ben, I don't know who you can trust, right? So I think I said, "Sure, yeah, I'm going with my family." And then during the GK Air Directors retreat in Las Vegas, I talked again to Mark Lawrence Cruz, and then we figured out some of the details of that. Um, so it was really a unique experience, just seeing the work on the ground, seeing for yourself. Again, the power of presence, right? Just understanding for yourself what's going on. Um, and then again squaring that with what people think and what people thought the situation was. I always feel really um calm and secure whenever I'm with GK. I have a story. Actually, I think it was 2004. We were in the van. We were traveling. Again, it was during this um, build, but we were in Quezon City, and a policeman stopped us on EDSA. It was a whole van of GK volunteers, from the US, and then some people from, GK USA and GK Philippines. And policeman stopped us. I forget now for what. We weren't speeding or anything like that. But then when he saw we had our GK shirts on, he saw the GK shirts, and the driver said, "Oh, this is with GK." The policeman basically said, "Oh, okay. That's good. Okay, salamat po. Okay na kayo." So that was really amazing, right? And I always thought that the reputation, the recognition of GK wherever I've gone to. I mean, it's just amazing. So I always felt safe also in Marawi. Obviously, we're with Mark. We were with Father Ben. Um, Nobody's gonna take unnecessary risks. But I never really felt in danger. It was, and obviously I won't bring my family and my daughter and my wife into a situation where I felt they would be in danger. So really, again, this is the difference between what you see on the news or what people say versus what's happening on the ground. We were able to see Ground Zero, which was the site of the most heaviest fighting, and you can see still the buildings were really pockmarked with bullet holes and rockets and so on. You can see the destruction, but you can also see the infrastructure going up. The roads, the water, the sewer, the electrical lines, the plaza, the convention center, the sports stadium. You could really see things coming back together. So again, you see the kind of like the suffering part, but you also see the successes. So again, what a wonderful trip, and we were able to see how K and K worked. Had to wake up early in the morning. We had to chop the vegetables, and help cook, and then help distribute the food and go to the schools and then help feed the children. Um, and that's really what GK is about, right? Seeing the impact of the work. So to me, that was important that we see what's going on. And also, I think these trips are always learning trips. Um, going back to one earlier point about um, people in the U.S. and Filipino Americans. I think we've been here long enough, right? Where we also get used to this um, efficiency and um, high quality of services and so on, right? But it's really efficiency, um, and we forget that sometimes it's not exactly the output; it's the process that's also important. And I feel with GK, I mean, that's also something we have to remember every now and then. Initially we said GK 777, right? You know, 7 years, 700,000, we put those targets. And it's good to have targets. And it's good to have metrics and say, okay, how many people have we affected? How many, children have we fed? But I think it's also important to see the process. I think those of us who have been here for a long time, we want it to be efficient. So in K and K, we're chopping these vegetables, very finely, and it's taking a long time, and we're using knives, and everybody's thinking the same thing. Why don't we just use food processors, right? Maybe I'll just donate a blender, and we'll be done here, right? But that's not really the point. I mean, the point is to bring the community together, and it's the process that's sometimes more important. So building the community was really the priority. I saw the same thing in Isabela when I saw GK Village there, and I saw a concrete mixer on the side of the site, right? And I said, "Oh, there's a concrete mixer. Why are we not using that? We can build these homes very quickly." And and the answer was actually, when we tried that, we destroyed the process. The fact that people are shoveling the concrete, and the sand and the water together, mixing it up. The fact that people form these lines, yung pasa-pasa ng
Yeah,
bucket of concrete. Yeah,
yeah,
yung brigade, right?
right,
That is really what builds the community together. So it's really the process, not so much the output of how fast can we build this village.
right.
So I think it's important to realize a lot of the investments, right, that we make in GK as, if we are in GK USA and we're contributing and we're doing all this work, fundraising, we're just not measuring the impact in terms of the numbers on the other end. I think there's something intangible here, which is building the community, and kind of like, unleashing the collective power of the organized community. That is really what we're also contributing to when we donate. So we can only see that if we visit. It's hard to say, hey, of course we can make those correlations and computations, right? My 85 cents, can feed a child for, so many days. Of course, we can do those calculations. But beyond that, what we're doing is we're creating these kitchens where the mothers can come in and they can work together and they can talk. And for those few hours, early in the morning that these mothers are there, they feel they're contributing and they're together. And we're building the Bayanihan spirit in that community, which allows GK on the ground to do other things, right? So that's hard to describe and that's hard to quantify.
To measure, yeah.
So our mindset, I think, in maybe in the US, and I'm just saying in the US, maybe other places too, right? Is that, understand that it's really more holistic than just, the correlation between what we give and what we get out. Because I think that's the beauty of GK. The beauty of GK is that we have these 6,000 plus volunteers on the ground, dedicated, passionate volunteers doing the work, connected with the communities. And we built them, one community at a time, with the power of presence, with people putting their time and effort. And in the end, that's really the lasting effect. Yeah. So anyway, just
No, I love that. And coming from an engineer like you who would I would say, be probably more keen on looking at the numbers, on the statistics, on the data, right? But that's coming from you, and it really is. I mean, the process, it's what transforms, right? The
Right.
people and the community, and
Right.
that's where you bring, you find hope, and in what we do, and that's where we find courage and all of that. It's not on the numbers per se, right? I mean, obviously we have to have some kind of measurements, and like you said, goals, right? But we should, like, the process is something that's intangible. The transformation that happens is something that's intangible, that we need to
And
see to keep
yeah.
this work.
And it's a two-way transformation, Donna. Actually, I mean, we always say this in GK, right? I mean, it's really us being transformed too, right? I mean, we go there, and if we let go of some of these preconceived notions about how it should be done, but just almost trust that this is a model that has worked for 20 plus years, um, we also learn from it, and we are also transformed.
Yeah.
We really see, I mean, even this trip to Marawi, right? I mean, one of the most touching things was towards the end of the trip, when we met with the superintendent for the Department of Education for all of Marawi City, all of that region, si Ma'am Chiki, and I forget now her real name, is Ma'am Chiki. um, and she said some things that actually made me really think, and she said, the siege that happened in Marawi, which led to all that fighting, and was in some ways, there were some good things that came out of it. So before, and this is what she said, before, Marawi people were, they're always been proud people, they're merchants, they are business people. But now, because of what's happened, they're more open to other communities helping them. They're open to Christians helping them and coming into the city. They're open to work that they wouldn't consider before, like service work, maybe working in a restaurant and so on. So she was commenting about the transformation that she was seeing you know, in Marawi with her people, because of what happened. And so seeing the good side come out because of that. And really it's the same with us, right? I mean, seeing the transformation on the ground, seeing how people help themselves, that also transforms us. And I think that's important to remember, and always just learning and just being open to new things. So sometimes, we in the US, in GKUSA, we ask for, reports, what happened to this, what happened to that. And sometimes the report is, well, we're starting this, we don't have the results yet. But our investment, again, is really, the work that's happening on the ground, that's very hard to quantify sometimes. So yeah, some sort of patience is needed, but we also have to be impatient too, right? Because we want things to happen, so that we can affect change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the name of Ma'am Chiki is Ma'am Chiki Unte Alonto.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's
Sorry.
Marissa.
Sorry, I forgot.
No, Marissa put that on the chat.
Yeah.
So let me read the rest of the comments here. We're about 10 minutes before the hour. From John, from John Harin, John Jaren. From John Harin, aktivista pala kayong dalawa. Carlos Capati, I believe there's such a thing called giving genes some of us possess. From LG, he or she says there are 4.2 million Filipinos in the USA as of 2019. There might be more. I think there's a newer stat.
Census, yeah.
The census came out. And then from Maricel, October 2024. Oh yeah, because you were talking about the goals, I think that's what comment was about. And then from LG again, for Lai Gonzalez, LG. Baka ikaw nakakaintindi doon. And then, he's a CEAT grad, 1988.
Oh yeah, and that's just College of Engineering and Agro-Industrial Technology. Yeah, and yan, she's my si Lai, I think.
Yeah, Lai Gonzalez. Oh, that's LG. Got it.
Yeah.
All right. And then si Marisa na sabi nga niya, Ma'am Chiki Ante Alonso. Yan. Okay. So, we have about, 10 minutes left or so. Sabi ko, meron akong pang Miss Universe question.
Oh, okay.
Kaya lang, before you answer it, you should say thank you for that. Just kidding. So, okay. So, did you ever feel that moving, like being an activista,
Mhm.
did you ever feel that you were less of a Filipino?
Mm. Well, first of all, thank you for the question.
Thank you for indulging me. Mas di na mga tama siya. Yes, we're serious about the work, you guys, but
Yeah.
have
No.
fun. GK.
You know, in many ways, I feel like, you know, we almost insist on it, right? We almost insist our presence. Sometimes I feel that. I my view on this has really changed a lot, right? When I was younger, obviously, I looked at people who migrated, as people who didn't stay and didn't, put up the good fight, right? They kind of escaped, they ran away. Um, and then, my view now is really more, I don't really care now where people come from. It's really more, what are you contributing to the cause, right? Um, and so I feel like my heart has always been um, really focused on the Philippines, and GK is one major part of my work, but I also um, work with the government of the Philippines in other capacities. So I worked as a balik scientist, a return scientist. I'm actually a corresponding member of the National Academy of Science and Technology in the Philippines. So, um, looking at science and technology and legislation regarding science and so on, policy making. So there are different ways to contribute. And I think wherever you are, it's really figuring out how you can contribute. I think that's really the key. And I sometimes ask myself, if I had stayed in the Philippines, what would have happened, right? I mean, can't really play this game because you don't know. But it doesn't matter anyway, right? I think everything that you've gone through in life adds to who you are, and potentially can also add to your potential contribution, right? So I think uh, the it doesn't really matter if you're in the US, if you're overseas in the Middle East, if you're in Canada or Europe. Um, and when you travel anywhere and you see Filipinos, I think you can sense that, sense of, yeah, I mean, we're still all Filipino. So it's deeper than, location. It's deeper than, where you currently live. The important thing is to really ask, okay, how can I give back? So, I've never really felt that I was less of a Filipino. I've been shut out of conversations, especially during election time, right? I mean, people will always say, what do you care? Or you don't have any standing to say anything because you're not here.
Yeah.
And then, I kind of, maybe that's how you feel. But I don't know, the fact that I am still involved and the fact that I'm debating with you on Philippine politics means I care, right? Because if I didn't care, then I'll just walk away and go on with my life.
Right.
So I don't know. I think uh, a lot of people. in the Philippines to, for example, the National Academy, right? That's why they have these categories of corresponding member, or even the government with DOST and the Balik Scientist Program, or UPLB, where I'm still, I'm not sure if I'm still officially an adjunct professor, but I was, and then it was renewed, and I don't know what the status is now. But you know, they reach out in the spirit of collaboration, and I try to collaborate. And so I think more and more people, you know, understand the value of the Filipino network all over the world. Oh, and also PAASE, sorry, it's the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. It's really done a lot in terms of, you know, putting together US and Philippine scientists to work on various things, including during the COVID pandemic. So, so I think if we can harness all of that brilliance, all of that, you know, genius all over the world, all of the gifts and passion, you know, I think, you know, we would really make a huge impact. So I don't know. I don't think I've ever thought that I was less of a Filipino just because, you know, I'm living in the US. Don't know. That's a long answer. Sorry.
No, no, it was good. No, I asked that because I actually feel more Filipino when I, you know, now that I'm here. I realized that when I moved back to the Philippines for 2.5 years, then came back, you know, because I just feel that parang, you know, like you miss your country more, you miss your, you
Hmm.
know, parang mas napipil ko, yung,
Right. Right.
you know, I don't know about you, like when I hear the Lupang Hinirang, when we sing
Yeah.
our Philippine national anthem, it always gets me teary-eyed. I don't know why, but only when I'm in the US.
Yeah.
You know, growing up in the Philippines, you know, you always have that like first thing in the morning when you go, you know, when you go to school,
Yeah.
like in one way or another, because you know, it's just so it's become a routine, right? Everything it's so accessible, everything is so
Yeah.
accessible. But
Well,
now
yeah.
generation today, you know.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting, you know, so there's two kind of like anthems that get me. Yung Lupang Hinirang, of course, and then also UP Naming Mahal, you know, when they sing it, uh you know, the lines are actually quite, you know, very, you know, apropos, right? I mean, it's uh malayong lupain, amin mang marating, hindi pa rin magbabago ang aming damdamin, you know. So, you know, even if you reach faraway lands, your feelings will not change, will never change. So, yun yung time na talagang, oh, matindi, di ba? Kasi, uh, when you get to that part, I mean, that's speaking to me personally,
Right.
right? And you know, it gets me teary-eyed too. I think the first time, uh, one of my trips, you know, I had to do a lot of like UP related things, and it, you know, they sang it every time. I think the first time I got teary-eyed. The second time I kind of like made sure I won't, you know, be too affected because I was going to give a talk. So, but yeah, it was, you know, so I, you know, I think there's a growing recognition that wherever you are, you can contribute. The other thing too is if even if you're living in the Philippines, it really depends really on what you do, right? I mean, if you are living in a gated subdivision and you are disconnected from, um, you know, the rest of your countrymen, you know, kababayan who are living in different conditions, you know, I don't know. I mean, if you go to a different class of mall, it always
Yeah.
gets me that in the Philippines you have this classification of, you know, B, C, D, A, B, C, D venues and malls, and you know, everything is classified in terms of you know, economic demographic.
Right.
And it seems to me if you stay only in you know, areas where you will never mix in, you will never really understand, right? I mean, we see that also with our government officials. You know, how can you understand the plight of the poor if you've never even taken public transportation, right? You're in your air-conditioned plane, not even air-conditioned car, right?
Yeah.
So there's this disconnect. So I don't know that you can claim that just because you're in the Philippines, you're more Filipino if you're living that way. So I don't know. I mean, again, this is becoming controversial. I don't know, Donna, if you want to be
Sabi sa'yo, pag
censored or not.
universe, pang boy abunda question pala. So, well, on that note, let me just read this. We have to wrap up here, but I wanted to read this, answer this question from LG. He's asking how long you've both been living here in the US. How long have you lived in the US?
So I moved here in 1992. So I don't know what that is now. 31 years now. Yeah.
For me, 1998. So it's been a while. And Tito Charlie says, Bayan ko is what gets me. And then from LG also, I don't feel less Filipino just because I live in the US. I love that line. Thank you for sharing. Kiko. Yeah, and on that note, also Maricel said, coming from a scientist and lover of country can't have a better combination. And I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. It has been a very, oh my gosh, parang ano talaga, food for the soul ang ating conversation ngayon. And, you know, I'm inspired by you. I'm inspired by what you do. And I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to work with you and looking forward to even more, you know, more work for us, for all of us, no? So that we can help more people and poverty in the Philippines, hopefully in our lifetime. And if not, that, you know, I it's my hope and prayer, as I know it's yours and everyone here, that we build something, we plant something for generations. You know.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Donna, for this opportunity. This was fun, and also
Yeah, it was fun.
hopefully some people will watch.
Yeah, no, it's been, you can watch the, I mean, you can read the comments later, and if you'd like to comment also, I'm sure they will appreciate it. Well, good night, everyone, and thank you again for joining us this evening. It has been another episode of Kwentong GK. Join us again next month, last Thursday of the month. Thank you and good night. Bye-bye.